The beauty of online stuff is a lot of things can be, redone. If you publish a podcast, but you don't like one of the sentences in there, you can actually go back, edit it, and re-upload it. But you can't take back a broadcast email.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
Hey, and this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com. Today,
Interview.
So guys, super exciting. We've got James Schramko on the podcast. He's the author of Work Less, Make More, and creating a bunch of content over at SuperFastBusiness.com. James basically helps business owners, salespeople figure out the leverage points so that they can basically work less and make more. And there's a track record that's miles long. Definitely worth checking out superfastbusiness.com to see more about what he's about. But James, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. And it's a great opportunity to talk about things that are exciting for us.
Yeah, I'd say so. And I have to pat myself on the back a little bit. The reason you're gracing us with your presence is thanks to cold email. Do you remember that message I sent you?
I do. And I mean, we get a lot of cold email messages, especially when you have a podcast. And we have a podcast that I think must have made it onto some kind of list of podcasts you should apply to, because we do take guests. We've been around for a long time, 10 years. We'd be considered reasonably established because we have a lot of the peers that people would want to, they'd recognize the names on our podcast. So every single day we get requests in our help desk and in my personal email. And of course, my personal email is not hard to guess. It's my name plus my business name, which I'm sure is a common formula. I do also publish my email address on my Instagram profile as part of a connection strategy, because I think it's a fantastic sales channel. I really do like email. A lot of people hate email, and I do like selling. So I don't mind handling the emails, but pretty much most of the podcast pitch emails will just get deleted if they're not in any way, shape or form custom or personalized. Then they'll be treated as a template or, bordering on, it's really unwanted. So it just gets deleted. If someone sends it to our help desk, I think my team, as part of their SOP, they've got some filters, but most likely they'll just reply saying we're not taking guests, because we actually organically generate enough guests without having to answer any cold email, believe it or not. Through my peer network, through my successful case studies, through students, I'm coaching hundreds of people. And I'm also constantly being introduced or networked, with my own peer group. So I don't need the cold email. But your one was unique and rare because it's just very infrequent that I would get something that I'm actually interested in replying to. So it starts, of course, with everything from the subject line to the nature of it. But I think you really understand one of the fundamentals that most people sending out emails miss, and that is you made it oriented towards the person receiving the email rather than the person sending it. That's probably the biggest differentiation to start with.
So, of course, this is the end of the show. This was just a testimonial for Jack.
Well, look, I mean, I don't mind saying that email is best of breed. And I think I said that in my response, because I coach people who teach and do cold email. It's not my forte. The way that I've built my business over the long term is I've got a real pull market. I have people coming at me all the time. Like the testimony in reverse is you guys were emailing me, which is the way it happens in my business. I generate content. I have referrals. I have word of mouth. I have not needed affiliates or paid traffic or launches to run my business the way that I've set it up. If I was to do cold email, I would have gone out to some of the people who I coach who are good at it. But having worked with them and having had them present on my podcast, having had them present at my live event, I know the fundamentals. And also as a consumer, I know the emails which I'm going to open and respond to or just delete or filter out. You passed all the first checkpoints, but I knew exactly what was happening. And that probably makes me a little bit different to the average consumer, because I've spent a long time in sales. I study selling and negotiation and influence, and I understand the process of what's happening. And I could see what was going on very quickly after the first interaction or two, but I kept going with it because I appreciated it and it was respectful and genius. So there you go.
Yeah, well, I'm grinning ear to ear over here. Thanks, man. But look, our listeners definitely have a treat. I mean, just that short intro, you know, the caliber and the background really of our guest today. So, James, I have to kick things off with a broad question. How do we sell more?
And work less.
To sell more, I think it's important that you understand a fair bit about who you're selling to. And this sort of fits in with the way that I think sales could be defined. And I studied under, our first book I ever read on sales was when I was 12, and it was Tom Hopkins, which if you read now, it's extremely outdated. It's, things have changed a lot since the 80s. Then I went into Brian Tracy, The Psychology of Selling, and that's quite a good framework, but it's still outdated. And then I moved into more research-based sales, things like spin selling by Neil Rackham. And then there's a modern version of that. I think it's the Challenger sales method. It's probably one of the few research sales methods. The bottom line is you have to understand your customer because you need to be able to help them be better off. And if you can just help someone be better off, then that sets up the scene for how to sell better, because then you're now focused on only dealing with the people who you know you can help be better off. And then you focus on creating the environment where they can see they will be better off. And sometimes that involves asking a few questions and refining your understanding of their situation, and also asking a few questions that will help demonstrate to them that they actually have a problem and that you might be the one to solve it. And then, of course, there are other elements like pointing out why your solution is different, proving all of your claims, asking for the business, because a lot of people leave that little bit, the essential part, off the end of it. Maybe they're scared. And that I think comes from a false understanding or thought about what selling is. A lot of people think it's pushy, manipulative, greedy, even fundamental belief systems that are put there by their parents. Money's evil, stop asking questions. Like, these things kill sales people. And I think the best salespeople can actually be quite analytical.
So it starts off by answering two questions. Who are you helping? And how exactly are you making their life better? That's sort of square one, yeah?
If you had that basic understanding, you'd be in a way better position to sell than if you just go out to the market hitting, I call it the baby seal method, they're just clubbing baby seals for their fur coat. And it's not nice. It doesn't help the seal. They get warm in winter, but the seal's not happy.
Yeah, that's right. And there's so many parallels when you just narrow this down into cold email, where you're not emailing everyone. It's a very defined segment of that market. Any tips for our listeners who might be saying, James, that's a great starting point, but I'm a little bit fuzzy on who exactly I'm serving here?
When that question comes up, I always ask, have you served anyone ever? Because that's a good starting point. If you have any sort of sample size or database to work with, we can go and have a look at why they bought from you. What problem did they have? What was the process that caused them to be a customer? And we could see if we could re-engineer that. And that's probably easier to work with what we know than what we don't know. So
starting with the facts as opposed to making guesses is...
Yeah, like, what do we know? Sometimes simply a case of asking these people who bought, like, why did you buy? That used to be the first question I'd ask people after they purchased, and I'd get some fascinating answers. And they'd tell me things I was aware of, but they'd also tell me things I wasn't aware of.
Okay.
They might say, oh, I heard you on Jeremy and Jack's podcast. I'd go, great. I should get in touch with those guys and be on their podcast again. Because that's going to make it easier than just like shooting in the dark.
Okay. So basically, one of the takeaways that we'll have from this conversation, whenever you get a new customer in the door, just ask them after that purchase comes through, why did you sign up? Why did you buy? What made you place that order? So that's a deeper question than just saying, hey, where did you hear about us? I'm guilty of that sometimes.
And there's a lot of flaws with the where did you hear about it, especially if you have like a pre-selected options. I've seen research that shows people just click on the most convenient one to get through that part of the survey.
So right. So damn right.
When you have an open-ended question, and if it's sent as an organic, I'd say now a Jack Reamer style email where you feel like it's only been sent to you, that's the metric. Was this email only sent to me? That's what we're thinking when we look through our inbox? Or is this just a mass-marketed piece of template? If it passes that filter, then they're more likely to answer. If you said, hey, I'm just thank you for becoming a member or being a customer of such and such, I am curious, what caused that? Like, what made you come on board? And you'll get some kind of response from most people because it's unusual. Not everyone is asking that question. Usually after you buy something, whether it's a phone or a car, you just get that generic, stupid survey that's going to take you like 45 minutes and you just abandon halfway through. That's like, my feedback on most of those surveys is don't send me this kind of survey. I hate those surveys.
We value your feedback. Please press what? We don't value your time.
You reply back and saying like, don't send these. And then you get the email back saying, this email is not manned. If you've got a support query, go here. I'm like, I'm just like, forget it, guys. You just missed the point. My favorite's like no reply at emails. That's super personal, right?
Yeah, it just warms your heart.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to ask, is there any way we can automate this and still make it kind of feel personal, warm?
Absolutely. I mean, I do. I like to think of autoresponders. I kind of got this thought from Dean Jackson, who's pretty well known for email mastery. And he doesn't mind autoresponders if it automates something that you would send personally. I can give you some examples of that. I have a membership at SuperFastBusiness, and I'm particularly interested in helping people get a result because I'm performance-based. Most people come in on a pay-by-the-month program. And unlike everyone who's like, sign them up and then hope they don't notice it on their credit card, I think they use the word ding. I better throw that in there. We'll ding their credit card until they realize what it is. That's the opposite the way that I operate. I want them to get a result because I want them to be better off, because I want them to stay, because I like recurring subscription income, but they also like a recurring solution that keeps helping them. So as part of that, one of the automations I have is they don't show up after a certain amount of days. I think it's 21 days at any point, and maybe it's even 14. It will send them an email. And this email that I send, I think it's got a 92% open rate. It's like very, very specific. I think it says, "Are you okay?" ? I think that's the subject line.
Love it.
And then I think it's like 2 words or something, or 3 words. It's like, just checking in on you. And then it's James. Like, it's a very short, simple email. However, it is the email that I would send personally if I could somehow know that they've come up to 21 days. I could probably have the machine send me a task and then send the email. But what I've found is pretty much everyone thinks that email is personalized to them, and it is behavioral based. So it makes sense if they've been missing that I would follow them up and ask if they're okay, because that's what happens in a normal relationship.
Sure.
If you and I become surfing buddies, Jack, and we're having usual sort of discourse, and then you drop off the face of the earth, it would be normal for me to send you a message like, hey dude, I haven't heard from you. Are you okay?
Yep.
So it replicates what I would like to send personally. So you can automate it. But the other obvious one, and one that I use a lot in my business, and I'll give you the context to this, the single biggest conversion point in my business happens via email, is the use of humans. Like, hire people in your team to represent you and your business, and to understand intimately why you're in business, how you help people, and what solutions we do offer, and to be able to have that back and forth communication, man on man, woman on woman, and to be able to help people. But it's still not you, but it's a delegate of your business.
Now, I love that. How do you actually train someone, onboard someone to make sure that it's your voice, even for it's someone else?
Absolutely. Now, here, for relevance here, my team members are clocking up 10 years this month. So
that helps.
The first one's clocked up 10 years. So imagine if you've worked just for me every week for the last 10 years, do you think you'd be able to take on my voice quite well by then?
Yeah, most likely.
Probably your accent as well.
They still use their own avatar for our support desk. So they're not sending any emails as me. I'm the only one who sends emails as me. However, we have a culture as a business. We have a professional standard. I came from Mercedes-Benz and we run our business like Mercedes-Benz. And well before anyone else in my market, because I've been doing this for about 15 years, I had a 7-day-a-week support philosophy. If you put a ticket in with my business, you will get an answer that day and probably within the minute or the hour, depending on if someone's awake. That was important to me. Whereas most businesses in the online space, you're lucky to get a response within a few days or a week because they never resource their support side of the business. And typically, they don't even have support. So it's the founder or the owner, and they're pretty busy chasing the next customer through the door to be able to worry about support inquiries.
So you've got a team with you who are hitting this 10-year mark, and you have a Mercedes-Benz culture, if you will, of obsessive support where Saturday night you get an email, somebody's going to be on it soon. So do you have scripts for newer employees of yours that are going to be reaching out to customers? I mean, or is it in-depth training or both?
So the way it's worked for us is if someone comes on board, and the last person we took on, we don't hire very often. We didn't hire for the last 5 years. And we hired someone in 2019. And within 2 weeks, that person was pretty up and running with our culture. And the way we do it is we have such an innate understanding. It goes beyond SOPs. I mean, my team taught me a lot about SOPs because pretty much all of them used to work for American call centers in the Philippines. So they understand and actually like SOPs. They like structure and rules, which as entrepreneurs, we have to be conscious of. Sometimes we don't like them. So we don't think our team does. So it's very rare that a business founder or owner actually will think about or document SOPs. But you can ask your team to document it. You can say, listen, we're going to learn what to do here, but as we go, why don't you write down what we do so that you can refer to it next time? And it's the same way I used to train salespeople. I had a checklist, and then I would sit with them and I'd take them through the training over a couple of weeks. And by the end, they'd filled a notepad full of notes, and it turned into their personalized training manual. And this was so powerful. They all went on to become the top performers in the industry in this country and management roles. And now I'm even doing some business with some of them. So have your team create their own SOPs if you don't want to sit down and chunk out some SOPs, which you don't, right? Unless you're German or you love systems and stuff. Generally, you're not going to be attracted to that. The second thing is...
Sorry, James. Let's get back to the second thing in a second, but I just want to clarify. From my perspective, it sure sounds nice to be able to have my team create their own SOP. In your experience, is this best for clarity, for output?
Reusability even.
Well, I don't know about you, but when if you ever had a job, anytime you had control or the ability to tailor your own environment, usually it helps you perform better. Like my philosophy is I don't mind how they do their SOPs or what systems they use, as long as they're happy with them. I don't log into my help desk. I don't log into my website. I don't log into the many tools we use to produce and create content. I could tell you the names of them because I pay the bills, but I don't use them, and it's not important to me. If I'm not using the tool, why would I mandate that we have to do it unless there's some other importance? Like, for example, when they started creating all these fantastic systems in the very beginning, they were putting them in different places. So I said, why don't we get Google for Business? And I'll pay $5 a month per person, whatever it costs. And let's just say the first SOP is, or the first rule around SOPs is that it should probably live in Google Drive because that's accessible to everyone. And we have some kind of sort of sharing protection, privacy from inside the company versus outside. And if someone leaves because they go and do their own thing or whatever, we can just transfer their stuff to someone else, which is good for the security of their business and the longevity. And we all want to continue to get paid in the future, so that's probably something we should be behind. The second thing is with SOPs is if we're going to do something more than once, we probably should create an SOP. and then and document it. And then we should share it with anyone else who's using that SOP, and so that there's more than one person on there. In fact, I have a recommendation in our business that at least 2 people know how to do everything. That's kind of the squash by the bus policy. I call it the Noah principle, 2 of everything. And then going back to before, when someone comes into our business, there will be SOPs, but our team know our SOPs so well, they're probably not referring to them that often because they've been doing it for years. Once you know something and you're unconscious competent, you won't need to refer to the SOP. So that's the deep level they're at. When someone comes in, I assign them a partner, a buddy, just like scuba diving. You won't be able to learn scuba diving without a buddy because you can drown. It's amazing how many business owners are drowning their new staff. Like, here's your oxygen bottle, go in there. Oh, where are they? And then they see their body floating down, not good. Give them a buddy.
Yeah, I got my fair share of dead buddy.
Right, that's how I got introduced to some of my jobs. It's like, there's your desk. Good luck. It's like, I didn't even know how to put petrol in the car or how to turn the headlights on. The first time I had to drive home in the company car when I started my first sales job at a car dealership. Everyone went home and I'm the last guy there with a key to the car, and it had the warning light on. I could not find the headlights, and it was frustrating. It's not the best first day. So think about, what would the best first day be for your employee? They'd have all the documents ready for them to get paid, because I can tell you the problem that you're solving for them is they probably want to get paid. That's one big problem. That's why they have a job. Another problem is they want to feel valued and appreciated. So you can do that by actually caring and respecting for them. So get them all the documents they need to get paid. Get them all the work tools they need to be good at their job. Show them how the system works. Give them someone to just hold their hand in the beginning, especially, and take them through the ropes, and back off on your expectations. A lot of people think they're going to hire a Swiss Army knife that can just come in and automatically do everything. Oh, I heard James on a podcast talk about his team doing this stuff. So they hire someone off a contracts board, and then they give them the logins, and then the next day they're whinging that they don't know how to do everything automatically. It just doesn't work like that. In our business, it will take someone about 2 weeks from zero, providing they're the right person, and we can talk about how to get the right person or hiring processes if you want. From 2 weeks, they will be up and running, reasonably competent, and performing at probably 60% of what they could perform at down the track, but doing it without errors and starting to enjoy it and build confidence and doing good work.
So many questions here. Just because in sales, whether it's running your own business or your outbound team, there's so many parallels here. Okay, let's talk about after 2 weeks. Let's fast forward. They're at a 60% competency level. They're starting to enjoy the craft, and they're not left hanging. Day one is they've got everything they need to get paid to succeed. Silly question here, James, but do you have a dedicated person say, okay, look, for the first month or so, they're going to need a lot of hand-holding, check their work each day or at the end of each week? I mean, is there an assigned person responsible for their output?
Our system takes care of that forever. We have a daily report in the morning, like just what are they going to do today? They just log in and say what they're going to do today. That's a courtesy. Like, we all know at the start of the day who's on, what they're doing. So that's good as a communication tool. So we use Slack, and Slack is our virtual office. Okay. That's the hub of our business. So we already know who's on and what they're working on, and they can help each other. Anything we do in our business has a cross-checking process. I don't know if you've ever flown on an airplane. They say cabin crew cross-check doors. They don't just leave it to chance that someone's doing what they're supposed to do, because it's very hard to check your own work. So nothing happens in our business. Like an email broadcast, it will be formed by one person, and then it will be test broadcast, and someone else has to check it and say, yes, okay, to hit the send. It's like the nuclear launch code. 2 people have to turn the key for this to work. So we have very few errors in our business. So to answer your question, it's basically impossible for them to go off and just maverick bulldoze. The bulldozers run off, engine running, no one driving it, mowing down a forest. Can't happen, because there's usually a cross-check process that's going to pull that one up. And definitely in the beginning, as the owner, I'm going to be checking in with that person myself pretty much every day for the first week or two, to get the temperature. I'll know by 2 weeks if they're going to stick with us or not, because they will have revealed themselves. If there's someone who's going to roll in late, or they're just not a good fit for the role, they don't seem to be able to handle the task, you will know within 2 weeks if you're keeping a close eye on things. But absolutely, the person I assign as their buddy, I'm going to check in with them. If you join my business, Jack, and Jeremy's your buddy, I'm going to say, Jeremy, how's Jack going? What's he good at? What's he struggling with? Where do you think I should be able to help him with the focus? What roles in our business would be suited to him? Do you think he's the right person for our business? Have we done well with the hiring process or not? And Jeremy will say, yeah, he's cool. He's going to fit in great. He's actually brilliant with cold emails. Anything we've got with that, we should steer him towards that. And now we're starting to shape the future from the beginning.
James, just as a side note, how big is your team currently? And can you actually tell us maybe some of the things that you don't cross-check? Like, is that okay to send a quick email, or do they actually need to cross-check that email? Personalization, okay. Data entering, is everything really cross-checked?
Well, there's some things that can find you some leverage in that. For example, in our support desk, we have macros. So there's pre-filled answers to cater for pretty much every question we ever get asked. And if the team's not sure, let's say there's a first-time question and they don't know how to answer it, and we get weird ones like, I'm flying to your event, but got to submit my visa. Can I get a letter a letter of invitation? That's might be an unusual request. So my team then, we have a channel in Slack that is a sister channel to our help desk called Help. And the team will type the question in there and refer to the ticket number. And then if I'm the only person in the business who could answer that, then I will answer it there in Slack. And then they'll go and paste that into Slack, and then they'll make a knowledge base, or they'll make a macro with the answer. So the next time it happens, it's effectively already been discussed and checked. So they will just be able to import the response and then customize it for the customer. And you're operating in a pretty safe environment there. Notwithstanding, the guy who's doing support's been around for about 10 years, and his previous role was as a team leader in a call center, which is a support center. So very, very, very experienced. So there might be small things like that, but you can bet when we're sending a broadcast email, it's going to be cross-checked because the risk is higher. So we also, we do something in our business that a lot of businesses don't do. We actually identify where the high priority is and where the risks are. Like, we can delineate between a high priority or a low priority, a high risk or a low risk. The more the risk is going to go up, the more chance there's definitely going to be a cross-check procedure around that. Like, whenever we go live with a page on a website, like we put out our new event or whatever, it will be built in a staging area, and I can review the site before it gets switched live. Another classic example is, like, we're making a lot of content. We do 2 podcasts a week. We publish videos every single day. So what we've created here, instead of me being the bottleneck where they want to send it to me to check, I'm like, can you just check it between yourselves first, and then you just put it in a for approval channel. So in this for approval channel, what happens is they post the title, the meta description, the tweetables, the timelines, the call to action for the post. And they also post the content upgrade. They'll actually post the PDF title, the content that's going in it as a text snippet. And I can check that. Now, don't respond to them within the day. They're just going to publish it anyway. So I call this a production line. It goes through the production line in front of my window, and I can recall it or change it in a certain time. But if I don't, then it gets published. The beauty of online stuff is a lot of things can be, redone. If you publish a podcast, but you don't like one of the sentences in there, you can actually go back, edit it, and re-upload it. But you can't take back a broadcast email.
James, a lot of our listeners are either running their own companies or at least in charge of sales at their company or in the realm of sales at some function. Now, were you always good at building the team and sort of handing things off? I'm just thinking there's a lot of listeners right now who are saying, damn it, that sounds cool, but it's just not my natural ability. Maybe I'm a control freak entrepreneur. Is it something you're born with? Do we have hope out there? Give us some good news.
We definitely have hope. I've engineered lots of leaders. Look, we're not prepared for this. They don't really teach it at school. If you've had a job, you're usually on the other end of it, right? You're the employee. And we get all these wrong thinking. We get taught to be an employee. We get taught at school to turn up at certain times and answer predetermined questions. So we're not really trained for this. So what you're talking about, I really empathize with. Everyone's been in that situation. Before you're good at something, you usually suck at something. So I do think you can actually improve it. And for my background, I got into it quite early because I started selling when I was 23. And it took me about a week until I had the keys to the place because I was the first one there and the last one out. So I started taking on responsibility. And then because I had by far the best systems and the best results, it was natural for the dealership when they hired someone new to stick them under my wing and get the best possible outcome. And within a few years, I was a manager. And once I became a sales manager and I had my own team, that's when I started fully documenting and creating systems. My sales hiring, my recruiting system and training system was so effective that Mercedes-Benz asked me to train all the other dealers. They wanted me to train my competitors what we were doing that was working so well. And then I was able to take a dealership from being in the last position to being in the first position. So twice Mercedes-Benz steered me into underperforming dealerships to turn them around. So at that point, the most employees I had at any point was around 77. And in my own business, when I started my online business, I built an SEO business and a website development business. So at peak, we had 65 people, 65 virtual team members. And today I have 6 in my team, just for context, because we have a different business model. I sold those businesses. And now I would consider we would be called a publishing business, as a coaching business. We're just publishing content and delivering our coaching means we have quite a lot of sort of publishing type activities.
Okay, no, this is sort of gold here, because if you really want to scale your sales process, your business, you've got to figure out how to get the right team in place and pretty much how to get out of the way. I'm curious, since you've got lots of experience building teams, recruiting, and sort of making these sales systems, a lot of the first steps, I imagine, is an entrepreneur reads E-Myth and then says, all right, I guess I can figure it out at this point. But that's probably not true. What's like baby steps in order to start building this system around you?
Change your thought patterns. It's like literally you got to rewire your software. But give me a couple of those sound bites of what you think the obstacles are, and I'll reword it for you. I'll tell you one. I'll give you one. And that is these very small businesses who don't have any team are not actually businesses. They are jobs. So that's the first thing. You could define a business as to the extent that it would work without you. So a lot of people are just running a job and they think they're running a business. It's cool to be an entrepreneur these days, but you're not really running a business. If you stop work and the money stops, then you have a job. So you're in peril and you need to do something urgently to save yourself from impending doom. That's the first thought pattern that needs to happen, is a realization that this is serious and it's urgent, because when the next recession comes, and it's been 30 years since the last big one, you want to have your business ready to take advantage of that market. And most people are hamstrung by the ability to deliver because they don't have team. Team brings you capacity to deliver. If you don't have that leverage and you can't deliver, you'll always be capped at your income because there's only so many hours in the day and there's only so much per hour you can make. And I'm going to guess most people who only have themselves or maybe one little outsourcer here or there, they're probably stuck in a low to mid 6-figure income at peak. And they're not going to see 7 figures until they get a team.
James, I'll give you a sound bite. But James, the stuff I'm doing is creative. It's going to take someone with my expertise in order to pull off, such as content creation.
Content creation is a pretty easy thing to hire for these days. There's super experts out there like Chris von Wilpert. Before him was Kyle Gray. companies like AppSumo or WP Curve hired these people to come in and create world-class content. So there are people out there who are probably more talented than you who can do it. There are people who are less talented than you who could get a bit of polishing. But if you could get 5 people who are 50% as good as you could have 250% more capacity, and you do nothing. But I would say if you are literally the best in the world, like you're like a Hollywood director, and that's the thing you want to do, then do that, but don't do anything else. Make sure you eliminate all the other stuff. If you are the world's best content creator, then you probably shouldn't be handling support, building your WordPress website, logging into your CRM, sending out emails, syndicating your stuff on social media, or doing your bookkeeping. Because if you're doing any of those things, you're wasting your high dollar per hour activity on low dollar per hour activities. And I have several case studies of talented people, a couple that come to mind, a brilliant film director, and he's hired people to pack his suitcase. So he's got an SOP, and they come and put all the gear
Nice.
and his cameras and lenses and stuff in his suitcase. They book all his travel, and he just shows up, does his thing, and then leaves. I've got a book writer. She writes books for people. But now I've had her hire some people who can do the research before the book. They do everything else around the book, and they even do drafts, and she just polishes them. And most people who have a book, they didn't even write it anyway. So like we think, Donald Trump's got a book, but he didn't write the book. I've got a book, but I had some significant help with the book to get my ideas articulated and put into a highly readable format that I wasn't going to be capable of myself. Certainly not anytime soon.
What an idiot. I'm the only one who did a 30-day challenge writing 500 words a day in order to finish my book.
Right. And then I've got a client who sells 35 books a month, and he charges people $3,000 or $4,000. So every one of my highest level students is just getting their book done, and it's ready within 30 days. If you take any longer than a month for your own book, and if you're writing it yourself, you're definitely doing it the hard, slow way. So it's really just a case of time versus money, or whether you have ego or you want to be an artist. But, the way to get a book to market quickly is just pay someone and get it done.
Okay, I got a question for you. With all your students, what do you think is the hardest mindset to crack or to shift?
Well, there's expert error, people who think they know everything. I've often found people who think they would self-classify as advanced, like at basic remedial level. And there's something wrong with their mind where they actually think they're amazing, but they're in a lot of trouble. Like they're more basic than basic. And that's really quite interesting. I found a couple of people who I think maybe they've just done one too many NLP courses or self-help books where they
fake it until you make it.
They've installed a belief system in themselves that they're just amazing and world conquering, but they're lacking the humility or perception to realize they're not. So the opposite, the trait that I've seen in some of the highest performers is a massive amount of humility. One of my students, he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. He's on track to make $500,000 a month. He asks questions that you would expect a beginner to ask. Who's the best at this? How do I learn that? What tool should I use for that? It's like they're beginner type questions, but he's at an advanced level. He won't become the expert. He won't become so arrogant or ignorant that he's shut off the possibility of learning new things. He uses me as a bouncing board or a research tool, and he finds the best resources. He learns things and implements. I think he's done 3 or 4 new courses already in 2020, and we're only 6 weeks into it. Like, he is just a rabid learning machine. So having an open mind, having humility, being humble and accepting that you don't know everything is a good starting point. So I find expert error really kills some people.
Yeah, you'd sort of have to have this beginner's mindset, or at least be able to see yourself as not the only person on earth who can do what you're doing, in order to bring in other people, other experts, even just a basic team to fill those shoes.
Look, I know a lot about the online business, and I'm coaching some of the heaviest hitters out there, but I still took your email and digested it and formulated into why it worked and put it into my master life system, which is it's a Google spreadsheet that has the best of every type of technology. And I put it in the cold email tab because what you do is different to most people and it actually works. So I can learn from anyone. I will learn something today for sure. And I'm open-minded. Like yesterday, I learned about how you make a passion fruit slice from the wife of one of my business partners who visited my wife while we were surfing down at the new wave park in Australia. And I tasted this thing, and then I wanted to understand the ingredients and how it was made. So, you can learn something every day and not think you know it all.
In fact, even about our own craft, like this week, I've been interviewing junior developer for, working on QuickMail. And turns out that some of the junior developer taught me stuff. And, I've been developing for like more than close to 20 years now. And then I still learn stuff. So be humble enough to open.
Yeah, you'll probably see some beautiful code or a different way of handling a process that's...
Different way of handling stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And I was like, that's interesting. I'm going to steal it.
One of my students has 500,000 students on Udemy, teaches coding. And I learn a lot from him. He's a very interesting guy. He's taught me a lot about the difference between working with good coders and bad coders. And I do know that if you have a good coder, they could be exponentially better than a bad coder. Like not just 15 or 20% better. They might be 500 times better. I've also had several students who are in software as a service related businesses, and they can afford to pay an amazing coder like hundreds of thousands of dollars more than an average coder. One of them was in a cryptocurrency startup float thing that went to a couple of $100 million, and they pay their top coder, I think, almost $500,000 because they're worth so much more than an average coder.
And that says something today when, thanks to the internet, you can connect with somebody in any country on earth and can find developers for, $4 an hour. It certainly says a lot.
My team is made up of individual experts from all around the world, but we have a full-time team, the core in the Philippines. But with Slack, you can actually bring in a contractor. So I've got a ManyChat bot expert in Australia. I've got an SEO expert in Spain. I've got a world-class designer in Australia. I've got a programmer, PHP API expert in the US. And I'm probably missing a few. But we bring in the best of breed for the thing that we want help with. And they work with my full-time team. And we learn and understand how that operates, and we work together.
James, let's go back a ways, probably a couple decades. Who was the first person that you hired when you ventured out of your previous sales role and started your own business? Like, what role was that?
Article writing. It's ironic, isn't it? Content creation.
It is.
I was selling software as an affiliate, and I was making $49.25 per sale. And my method back then, this is like talking about 2006, 2007, was writing a lot of content, putting it on my blog. And it wasn't a blog back then, it was a website, HTML website, and putting articles on places like eZine Articles and social media sites that probably half of them don't exist anymore, and publishing this content. And I still had a job. I was working at a Mercedes-Benz dealership as a general manager, and we had this temporary receptionist. She was normally doing tour operating in New Zealand, and she was just temping for our receptionist who was sick for some reason. And we needed to hire a full-time receptionist. So I went down to the front desk and I asked the lady who was temping, I said, could you write a brief for this role that you're doing now? You're doing the role. So I suspect you could write a better brief to hire this person than I could because I'm not doing the role. See, this is already a lesson here. Anyway, I went back to my office, and then she came back to my office and I said, oh, yes. I thought she must have a question. And she put a piece of paper on my desk, and it was the job description and the role, pretty much an ad for that reception. She'd done it in like 2 minutes. And I said, wow, that's incredible. I said, why are you temp receptioning when you could be writing articles for American marketers for $10 an article, $10 US an article? And she goes, what are you talking about? I said, there's a whole industry of people who write for a living for $10 an article. And you could sit at home in your tracksuit pants and, have chicken soup and watch.
And then you lost the secretary instead of hiring a new one.
She said, if this is so good, why aren't you doing it? I said, I do have my online business and I will, watch this space. I'll be quitting this job to do my own business. Because by now I was up to probably $150,000 a year in income from my side business. And I needed more content. I said, I will teach you how to write the articles the way that we do it, and I'll buy the articles from you. And I ordered 10 articles at a time for $100. And then I think she wrote thousands of articles for me, like a lot. And I was just, every time I published these 10 articles, I needed to make 2 software sales to cover the cost of those articles. So really the first mindset bridge that I made was, can I hire her to write the articles and they pay for themselves? Because if I can do that, I should do it. And then how many of those would I do? And then I just kept ordering and scaling up until I hired the second person, which was a support desk, because part of my marketing strategy, so it's a sales topic here, was I would offer an incentive or a bonus for people who bought this software from me versus anyone else. And this bonus was unique to me. I was the only person in the world who had this bonus. So I crafted a bonus that was so compelling that people who already had the software tried to buy it from me. They're like, we already have the software. Can we buy this from you? And so as part of this, when people would purchase, they had to claim the bonus. So they'd send me their receipt and I'd send them the bonus. And I was doing this like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times a day. And I still had a job. So I'd be like at lunch, I'd be logging into my email account, checking if someone claimed a bonus and then sending it to them before they complain. And I then did the numbers again. Hang on, if I hired someone to do support, if I paid them $1,000 a month, how many sales would I have to make for me to not have to log in 5 or 6 times a day and send bonuses? And then I automated a lot of it then. We used to manually check it. In the end, I just said, anyone who claims a receipt, just send them the bonus. Because I had a back end now. I had a membership and I had a way to start making more affiliate sales to those people. So I didn't mind even if they didn't buy it and they claimed the bonus. So I did the numbers again. What would it cost me if someone claims the bonus but didn't actually buy the product? Hey, I could make more sales in the back end by giving them the bonus that they shouldn't even have. But then people are trying to buy this thing from me. I said, you send me $40, I'll send you the bonus. And someone did. The next day I logged into my email. It was like 20-something people trying to buy it from me for $40. I'm like, oh my God, this product is desirable. So I put a domain up and I started selling the product, and I put it on one of the internet marketing forums back in the day. The first day that it went live, I also happened to be moving house. So I was off work for a week and I made $1,000 that day. And then I thought, oh my goodness, that's pretty much my salary, because I was making $300,000 a year back then. If I could do something like this ongoing, I wouldn't have to go to work, which would be awesome. So that was sort of the first information product that I started selling. And so then I had the product and the affiliate thing. So I was working both ends of the market. I realized the market of people who already had the software was bigger than the market of people who were going to buy the software. So it was a big turning point. It's really understanding my market.
Yeah, which is going back to how we began the conversation of understanding your market and really figuring out how you can deliver value. James, we're coming up to time here, but my final question to you, for the entrepreneurs, for the sales leaders listening, what's the one thing you wish they knew in order to help them sell a little bit more effectively, or at least to be more effective with their time?
Well, if you put it in a couple of words, it'd be question everything. I think the scripts we're running in our head control our life to a large extent. So it's worth spending time rewriting those. Seek out better ways. I always had, when I was selling, and I was a top sales performer. I twice won the Mercedes-Benz Sales Guild, and I also won it for BMW. So it wasn't a fluke. And I twice won the Sales Manager of the Year. And it's pretty competitive, Mercedes-Benz in Australia. Like, it's the top end of the market. And I always expected that there's probably someone out there in the world who's doing this better than I am. And I wondered, what are they doing? How are they doing it? So I always dedicated a little bit of my thoughts to innovation and betterment, improving, accepting that what I'm doing now is probably not the highest level I could be. And it was interesting for me watching Taylor Swift's documentary on Netflix, because she always ran that script that she could be a better version of herself. It wasn't healthy for her, as it turns out. But I think if you're in business, it's a good key to survival is expect that you could probably improve upon what you've got now. And I see that. The people who I coach, they come to me doing the best they possibly can with whatever they've done up to that point. They come to me to be better off. So it's up to me to infuse them with innovation, with new concepts, frameworks, ideas or thoughts. And I'd say a quarter of the things I'm doing with those people relates to how they're thinking, because that's going to determine their actions and that will result in certain outcomes, hopefully better off than where they start.
Absolutely love it. You know, I'm a big reader and even Audible kind of thing as well. Given that you've been reading books from, 12 years old on sales, do you have any good recommendation for us for 2020?
Well, if you're talking about selling, I'll definitely read The Challenger Method, because I think it's one of the most current, well-researched sales books. And it's got the foreword by Neil Rackham, who was kind of my sales superstar back in the day. And it's a good story around how I got onto that, because when I was in my last job before selling, I worked for a startup company in Australia that was starting digital telephony, and it was a division of Vodafone, which came from the UK. This is in 1993. So for anyone who would be listening in America, they would think that's very early for digital telephones, but Australia got it pretty early. And it was hard selling digital telephones in 1993 because the analog network worked just fine. And the phones were very expensive. They were a couple of $1,000, and they needed to get the best salespeople they possibly could. Now, I was an administrator. I was hired as a stock controller / office manager, seconded to a sales division. And they cherry-picked the best salespeople they could find from the existing retail sales channel, but also they went and got the sales director from Xerox and the sales manager. So they got these people who were selling $400,000 and $800,000 photocopying machines. It sounds crazy these days. Like we all have a little printer on our desk, right, that can do that stuff. But back in 1993, these were the best of the best. They were like the top gun salespeople on the planet. And I was in an administrative role. I didn't think of myself as a salesperson at all. But the human resources officer there, she said, I'd love to profile you just to see what your profile is. And I did one of those profiles. I think it was like a disc profile or something. She said, you know what? You actually have a good profile for selling. I'm like, wow. Yeah, well, I've already done debt collection stuff. I don't think I'm that interested in selling. But these people were learning about selling. They did sales training every week. They talked about spin selling. One of the sales reps gave me a cassette box of Brian Tracy's Psychology of Selling CDs. I played that cassette so much I wore the tape out. And I also discovered that we're going to have a baby. So I now needed to increase my income significantly. And I went back to that HR manager and said, can I get a job in sales? And she went to the sales director and asked, and they said, no. You can't. We need you in the role you're in. That's my first lesson in single source dependency of a team member. That's why in my business, 2 people know how to do everything, because I never want to hold someone back if they can progress, ever. I'd like to be able to say, yes, absolutely, you can do that. Go for it. Rather than, no, sorry, we need you. That's a bad sign. And so I had to go outside the company to get a sales job, which I did. My first attempt failed. I went to Toyota and they wouldn't accept me. So I went to BMW and I got the job over 28 other candidates. And within 1 year, I was the number 1 salesperson for BMW in Australia. And it was because I had that slingshot of learning from the absolute best of the best of the best. And I talk about it a little bit in my book, a little story there of the interactions I had with the salespeople. But I would not class myself as a salesperson. I'm not the typical salesperson. And that is the greatest advantage in sales ever. And the real secret, and it might be unpalatable for some people, is you have to care about your customer. If you care about your customer, if you have empathy and you really want them to be better off, you will win in sales.
Boom. Booyah.
So I would go for the Challenger method, but I've got a lot of books. I've read lots and lots of books. So if you had a particular thing you want to learn, then I'd segment down to a particular type of book.
Okay. Well, I'll send you a warm email.
Go for it.
Well, what about for building systems and processes and that sort of topic?
There's actually a pretty obscure book. It's probably not well known, but there was a book by Brad Sugars called Instant Systems. And I think that was helpful for me back when I wanted to build systems. It breaks it down pretty well.
Thanks.
That's a cool one. Actually, James, for something like a sort of better version or more up-to-date version of the eMyth, would you have anything?
Yeah, I didn't even love the eMyth, I've got to say. I think Sam Carpenter's work, The System, is probably better than the eMyth. It's right down the line. There's also a book called Clockwork, which is pretty popular now. It's on a similar vein.
Awesome.
Hey, James, this was a lot of fun. I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all of our listeners when I say really thank you for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with us today.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. You guys are great. Good questions too. I appreciate them. I think that's also very important. And thanks for sending me a cold email. I bet you don't get that one very often.
That's right.
It always feels good to hear that. So, okay, guys, look, check out James over at SuperFastBusiness.com and buy his book, Work Less, Make More. Check it out at Amazon and help out your sales process and just be a better salesperson and entrepreneur.
There you go.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high five by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher, or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
so they can send awesome emails
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.